Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
We are the participant of LPB Nasional from Aceh, from SMA Negeri 1 Nusantara, with our title is
Tun Sri Lanang and Abandoned Historical Site.
Here we go! First, introduction. Background. This research is based on the neglect of the historical site of Tun Sri Lanang and the knowledge of the next generation of the nation on the history of Tun Sri Lanang. In this era, young people learn more about the culture and history of other countries, such as like Japan, Thailand, and other history and culture. If the problem continue to happen, it can be as certain that in the future, many generations are not familiar with their historical heritage, and many of history sites will be abandoned. It is just like what happened with the historical of Tun Sri Lanang site.
Purpose. This research we do to find out how far the knowledge of Generation Z and Millennials to the historical site of Tun Sri Lanang. With it, we can know the fact we want to know, which is about how much young people know about historical site and to know the factor that might be the reason why the site can be abandoned.
The second is research methodology. The method that we use is first heuristic. Heuristic are active ways to find source to get the necessary data. In this research, data that we use is qualitative, quantitative, and field survey method. The second is interpretation. Interpretation is interpreting the fact in history and assembling them into a harmonious and reasonable whole. And the last is historiography. Historiography is historical writing. Third, result and analysis.
After research, distribute the questionnaire with the aim of finding out how far the knowledge of Millennial and Generation Z about the historical of Tun Sri Lanang, also his heritage. The questionnaire has been filled out by 101 respondents, and the result we got is
based on the questionnaire, the average result of respondent age is 14 to 40 years were obtained. So that there were two generations in the comparison of the knowledge about the history of Tun Sri Lanang and his heritage. It was found that 20% know about the history of Tun Sri Lanang, and as many as 80% did know about the history of Tun Sri Lanang. And most people think Tun Sri Lanang is a rich merchant from Malay with a percentage of 64.4%. Most thought that he was a rich merchant of Malay descent and assumed that he was from Riau with a percentage of 56.4%. Therefore,
after we did our research, we got the result of what factor might be the reason of the site can be abandoned is. Number 1, lack of interest and attention of the local community to the site. Number 2, lack of attention from the local government to the historical site. Number 3, there was a disagreement about the figure of Tun Sri Lanang in the local community.
Fourth, conclusion and future work. In fact, in the 4.0 era, there are still many people who don't know about their historical. One of them, as raised by researchers, is Tun Sri Lanang, an abandoned historical site. There are many factors why the Tun Sri Lanang site can be abandoned. One of them is lack of interest and attention of the local community to heritage site. Basically, the factor that causes us to forget history will continue to grow every day. But it should not be used to an excuse for us to forget and ignore the history of our own nation. In the future, this research is useful for conducting with the aim that millennials and Generation Z can get to know the history of their own nation without exception, with the hope that there will be no historical site that will be abandoned as that happened with the historical site of Tun Sri Lanang.